Over the next several minutes, you're going to get a crash course on how to do a NEPA environmental assessment. I'll cut through all the complicated jargon to keep things simple and straightforward. So first, what is NEPA? Let's hop over to the Environmental Protection Agency website. NEPA stands for National Environmental Policy Act, and this is a regulation that requires any types of project or policy implementations are assessed to look at significant impacts to the environment or social fabric of a community. NEPA mandates that federal agencies evaluate these environmental effects before they make decisions on policies or projects. Now, there are two potential outcomes for a NEPA. The first is the finding of no significant impact, or FONSI. This means the project is not going to significantly harm the environment. The other outcome is the opposite. It finds that there is going to be significant impact, and thus a full environmental impact statement must be done. You can think of the EIS as a regular environmental impact assessment that you may do in other circumstances, where you're doing a full assessment of all the impacts in detail. So what exactly is impacted by a NEPA EA? You might think, well, I'm not a government agency. Do I have to worry about NEPA at all? And really, it goes far beyond government agencies. An environmental assessment under NEPA is required for any type of federal actions that includes issuing permits, funding, or approving any major projects. If you're putting up a shopping center in a certain jurisdiction, then a NEPA environmental assessment may be required before any decision can be made. Now, it's important to know that a NEPA assessment isn't just for projects. They're also required for the creation of new rules or policies that may impact environment or communities. So what exactly does that mean? Well, in our neighborhood, most of the zoning is residential. Now, should they decide to zone part of the street as commercial, that would be technically a policy change. They're changing the policy to be a commercial zoning. Now, before something like that would be approved, they'd have to look at several environmental and social impact factors, such as, is that going to bring increased traffic? Is that increased traffic going to harm the community and the people in the community? Is that going to mean more CO2 in the atmosphere for kids who might be walking to school down the sidewalk? And what does it mean to the local wildlife? Are they going to be displaced? These are all the types of things that are looked at in an environmental assessment. And of course, it has to occur before a decision is made to approve a project or policy. So I talked a little in my example about the types of things you look at in a NEPA environmental analysis, and here's a breakdown. Air and water quality. That's one of the things you're going to look at when you're doing a NEPA environmental assessment. In the case of a residential turning to a commercial zoning, it could decrease air quality in the area due to the increased traffic. Wildlife and geology impact is another thing to look at. I talked already a bit about wildlife, and when we're talking about geological analysis, we're talking about things like water runoff, soil stability. Is a project, for example, going to cause runoff problems? Does it mean there's going to be more backed up rainwater in the streets? Social and community impacts is another big one, and this covers everything from day-to-day life to human health to impacts on cultural sites or tribal lands, as well as social justice issues. Is a policy change going to enhance equity in a community, or is it going to degrade it? So these are some of the key aspects you're looking for anytime you do an environmental impact analysis, but also when you're doing the NEPA assessment. So now we're going to look at the full picture, and don't get lost in this diagram. It can be a little disconcerting when you first look at it, but I'm going to take you step by step through a few of the key areas, because this is really going to help put the puzzle pieces of the NEPA process flow into place for you. So let's start at the top. First, you have the action that happens. Either a new policy is put forth or a new project is going to happen and it's in the planning stages, and the assessors find that it is governed by NEPA. So first decision point is, are environmental impacts likely to be significant? certain agencies or developers might right off the bat know, well, no, this project or policy really isn't really going to impact the environment or community in a negative way or significantly. And then we look at the shortest path, which is called a categorical exclusion, or CE. Basically, it's saying you're excluded from having to do any more work because it's obvious this policy or this new project is not going to cause any significant issues. Therefore, you get to skip all of this and you can go straight to the decision and approval making process. That's the fastest path. Now, the next path is, well, we're not sure. We need to look at it a bit more. And this is the EA, or the environmental assessment. This is, we need to look at it because we don't know for sure if it's going to have significant impacts. And so you start putting together the EA by looking at where is it impacting, what are the potentials, and you're really looking for a lot of public involvement because it's the public that can tell you, well, that new road you're putting in, there's really nothing there. In our opinion, we can't tell you of any significant impacts, or you might get the opposite. So that public involvement is key. So you go through the process of getting and reviewing the public feedback on the proposed project or policy. And now you ask the question again. Based on all this new information that we didn't have when we started this, is this project going to have significant environmental impacts? And if you find that it's no, then you're done. You skip to the decision-making process. Now, if the answer is yes, now you have a full environmental impact statement to do, which you can think of that EIS as a full environmental impact assessment. And so now you're going through several steps. You're doing a more detailed analysis. What is the baseline data based upon the potential impacts? What are the mitigation strategies in detail? What are the monitoring strategies, etc., etc.? And throughout this, you're going to be going through public feedback, scoping, etc., and going back and forth. And so we're really looking at three key paths. First, it's obvious there's no environmental impact. Second, we're not sure. We're going to put together an assessment and get public feedback to decide. And the third, yes, it is going to have significant impact, and now we've got a lot more work to do. And so if you chose path 2 and it's time to do that environmental assessment, how do you get started? So first, you're determining whether your project is governed by NEPA in the first place. Second, you start to define the project, define the purpose, the needs, and any alternatives to potential impacts. And so in step 3, you're going to begin doing that preliminary assessment of environmental impact measures. You're going to look at the potential areas that we looked at: water, air, flora, fauna, social and community, and identify where impacts may occur. And then you're going to look for any mitigation measures for those impacts. Next, you'll conduct that public and stakeholder engagement, where you're basically letting the public know, hey, this is the project that's planned. These are the preliminary potential impacts and mitigation to those impacts. And then you're going to gather that public feedback. Next, you're going to do a review and finalize your environmental assessment. And then really you're looking for one of two outcomes that we discussed: the FONSI, no significant impact, or the opposite, of finding that there will be significant impact, which means you need to take the next step to the full environmental impact statement. So there's a lot of resources out there that can help you put together that environmental assessment and kind of help you take those first steps. So let me go to our website so I can jump to these links. So here we are at the assessmentstools.com website, and I'm looking at the NEPA Environmental Assessment Guide. Now we're going to jump down here to get to some of those links of resources you can use. So I'm going to go to free templates. And if you come to the website after watching this video, I'll put the link to this page in the description. Then you can easily jump to each of these resources. So the first one's going to be a great place to start with your environmental assessment. It's called NEPA Assist. And this is a tool the EPA provides, and it hooks in dynamically to their GIS database. So let me bring this up. And it's a mapping tool where you're going to be able to zero in on a specific area. And then you're going to be able to look at some things like, let's look at water. And I might want to see, let's look at the water bodies. So that way we can see how close those are to a proposed project address. And now we're going to see them begin to be highlighted on the map. I can, of course, zoom in and out. And I can really tap into a lot of the information I'm going to need for that initial NEPA environmental assessment. So the NEPA Assist is an excellent tool you can use to get started. So what's one of the other things that helps the most when you're first going into doing an assessment of any type actually? And it's seeing how other people have done their assessments. So let's take a look at the next link, and this is a repository of multiple NEPA documents. And I can say I want to see other environmental assessments because I want to look at them and see how to format mine. Or I can say I have to do a full environmental impact statement, and let me see what those look like. And then I can click into several and really start to get a feel for how to format these. Another great tool is Anatomy of a NEPA Assessment. And this is a tool FEMA provides, and it's going to lay out the major components of how to format your environmental assessment document. So how do you keep track of all those different moving parts as well as what to put and do for your NEPA environmental assessment? And you can use our free checklist. We have it available in this article. You can download that. It's going to give you a full list of things you can check off to ensure you've got all your bases covered. Using those tools is going to give you that jump start you need so you're not wasting a lot of time searching for different resources. And that's really what we do at assessmentstools.com. You'll be able to see those and other resources there, including other comprehensive assessment tools, templates that you can customize, and find expert tips and guidance as well. So if you enjoyed this video and found it helpful, go ahead and subscribe to our channel and you'll always be notified anytime we put out a new video and new resources.